Hello and welcome. So, in addition to my usual smiling face, I've got a guest here with me today. You might or might not know Giles Male. He is the managing director, I think, of Full Stack Modeler and an Excel trainer extraordinaire. And he and I have partnered up to do a little training series that we're going to introduce you to today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Dim. Yeah, I'm excited to finally get this kind of started. We've been talking about this for ages, and it feels like you came back from Vegas particularly inspired to get on and make a video series for the broader potential competitor. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it was. I came back very energized. It was a fun event.
So this is
Uh,
going into year two of a road to Vegas. And I told you I was going to put together some slides for us. So shall I put them up now that people have seen both of our faces? We can kind of distract them with
let's
some nice visuals.
let's do it.
Okay, let's do that. So bear with me. Uh, there aren't many slides, you'll be pleased to. Here we go. This was the best attempt I could get at both of our faces in the same bubble. So here you go,
Yes.
guys. This is the intro video to the series that is going to come up from both of us to help get people ready to compete at the Excel Battle Series 2024. And we're going to start with setting a few expectations. So I'll let you kick off with the first one if you like, Dim.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, this is immediately aimed at people who are thinking about competing in the Excel esports events. But actually, I should even didn't mean to use the word competing. I meant to avoid the word competing. Who are interested in participating in, specifically avoiding that word because it's not. This isn't particularly strategies on how to win or kind of how to get an edge. It's like this should be helpful if you just want to improve some basic Excel skills. But also if you want to, take part, have some fun, some problem solving, meet an interesting community, then by all means do the battles as well. And this will help you with that.
And we
Um,
kind of put some words around what taking part and doing reasonably well meant, and we'll get into like the structure of the battles and everything, but quite specifically for me, when I competed the first time, all I cared about was not getting 0 points because I didn't want to feel absolutely terrible. So at the very least, what we're going to cover in this series over the next few weeks will get you to the stage where you are getting points on the board. And as you just said, like for me, I think the idea of being ultra competitive should just not even be a factor in people's minds. You just want to use it as an opportunity to get some really good training, some really unique training practice in throughout the year.
yep, totally agree. Totally agree. And yeah, I mean the pros, so to speak, probably won't learn a whole lot new in this. But if you're someone who has looked at this, maybe has watched some of the online rounds because those are pretty widely viewed, and either just thought, "What the heck is this?" or thought, "I wouldn't know how to get started," then this is probably going to help you. And I guess the other thing just to mention is we're aiming this in particular at having enough to let you get started by the time of the first battle, which is about 2.5 weeks away. It's I think the 25th of January, last Thursday in January. So we may, depending on how much fun we have doing it and how excited everybody gets about it, we may kind of do some more advanced stuff after that. But we're specifically aiming for a kind of a short glide path to being ready to have a go for the first time, if you want to.
And I think for those of you that are familiar with the structure, we think we can get you pretty consistently answering correctly rounds 1 to 3 out of 5. And I mean, just from my own experience, once you get into rounds 4 and 5, it's quite a big step up, and there's a lot more to that. And the other thing we wanted to make sure you're all aware of watching this is we are going to be using modern Excel, what we're calling modern Excel. So you're going to see dynamic arrays in particular. You're going to see some of the more recent additions to Excel being used, throughout the video series.
Yep. because this is the way.
This is the way, exactly. And off the back of that, so I told you, Dim, that I like to come up with cheesy things that are hopefully memorable from a training perspective. I'm hoping this is where I can add some, unique value to obviously all the incredible skill that you bring to the table for a video series like this.
I mean, you've
So I,
already added a lot more, structure and visual than I normally have.
well, look, this is my biggest addition to everything we've done so far. So I've come up with this idea of the golden triangle, right? So for me, if you want to do reasonably well and get off that nil point, sort of for any Eurovision watchers out there, the English are familiar with the nil point reference. This is it. This is what you're going to do. And top of the triangle is Excel skills. So ignoring the other two for a moment, if you just don't have this fundamental level of Excel skills, and a lot of that, to be honest, is just the use of particular functions, then you're going to struggle. So unsurprisingly, that's where we're going to spend almost all of our time in this video series. It's on mastering functions and a few other key features in Excel. But it's not the only thing because it's a battle. It's a live competition that you're going into. I do think there's an element of dealing with pressure and getting your mindset right. And I'm saying that theoretically because every time I've competed, despite thinking myself as a reasonably good modeler, my brain has just instantly died on me, and I've spent the first 10 minutes sort of screaming in my own head at how ridiculously stupid I'm being. But mindset's key, and I think you have some great insights to share on that, Dim. And then the third part of the triangle for me is experience, and I almost don't think there's a shortcut to experience on this. If you want to get better at this, you just have to practice and take part. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to any of those.
Yeah, no, I think that's all. I think that's all basically spot on. I mean, again, just I would emphasize just what was in my mind as you were saying that was that point about experience. Less so the mindset, but the Excel skills and the experience are all kind of things that will very much stand to you in real life. The mindset depends on whether you're doing other
Yeah.
competitive things or not. It might or might not, but at least to the extent that you're thinking about like coming up with new solutions, new ideas, new structures on your toes in a quick way, like getting a little bit used to that, that will definitely stand to you. Not just kind of learning, here's a list of 50 functions that I have to know, but like thinking creatively about how can I combine things? How can I use them to get what I want? That approach and that mindset will definitely stand to you in most work that you would be doing with Excel as well as just the competition.
It's a really good point. And I guess unless you had a really particularly difficult CFO on your neck that like to specifically say you've got 30 minutes to get me the answer,
I mean,
you can reach out.
it's not that that never happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there you go, the golden triangle. To everybody watching this, I really suggest you just keep that in mind. It is certainly fundamentally about Excel skills, but there's a few other factors in here. And look, this is the broad structure that you'll see that golden triangle kind of leaning into for the course. This is the introduction. So this is us, ideally just sharing a little bit of the kind of higher level guidance that we think is relevant to you. And then we're gonna start getting into a few of the Excel skills topics. We broke it down into two major categories, and then everything else. So text manipulation and mainly the functions around that, lookups and kind of data manipulation in some sense, looking up data sets and getting or extracting the data you need, and then everything else. And you did a bit of research into to kind of help us get to that. Did you want to talk about that,
Yeah,
Dim?
well, it's interesting. I was going to say that the thing that struck me about these two was first that, like as you say, I went through like all the Road to Las Vegas problems when we had talked about doing this to say, okay, like I'm not used to thinking about what do I need to solve level one. I'm used to kind of immediately solving level one and skipping on. But to a person who doesn't know that, like, what are the minimum toolkit to be able to do this? And it was striking to me that text manipulation, A, it is very often table stakes in the sense that either you have to extract text from an input, or you have to split, a concatenated list up into various inputs or something like that. But also, you and I talked about this a little bit, is that in my experience, a lot of financial modelers, even people I consider very, very good financial modelers, have a bit of a gap when it comes to text. Compared to, like, I guess I came up through a career path that was a little bit more data wrangly, and so there was a degree of inevitability to learning to kind of wrangle with text. But I kind of found to my surprise later that a lot of good financial modelers don't know that. So that's kind of why we picked that one to be front and center. And so, starting from tomorrow, this is text week. We're going to be sharing all the basic text functions, but then also some combinations, some interesting kind of ways you can put them together to do things you might not immediately expect to be able to do with them. Um, but the interesting thing that struck me was, so I did this thing of, looking through the cases and trying to identify what were the skills. But then you had also laid out a kind of roadmap. And I was like, hey, I've got this thing. And then we looked at them, it was like, oh, actually, we have the same number one and number two sort of text and lookups. Is like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
there's something consistent coming through here.
And what we had beyond one and two, like text and lookups, was not a million miles apart. In particular, there are categories we could have specifically put in, like turn-based games and other ones that I don't really know how to categorize, but it's just like you need to do lots of steps of logic to get to the solution. But it felt simpler for what will be a relatively straightforward video series to just kind of get the main bulk of what we want to cover done in those first two, and then just say everything else we'll kind of deal with later. Because I think some of the other bits, like the term-based logic, are quite advanced. I don't think there's any way of getting away from it. So
Yeah, and I think in my mind one of the sort of distinctions as well is that once you get to that, it's less about the functions. It's more about the creative use, kind of the structure of your model, the algorithm that you come up with to tackle the problem.
Yeah,
Like I think that if somebody follows through, 2 weeks of this course, they should have not everything to tackle every possible problem, but you know, enough to tackle the vast majority of things if they use them in creative ways. But that part can sort of become as advanced as you want because like some of the some of the later problem, like in the problems in the knockout rounds, have involved having to do like genuinely non-trivial algorithm design, like backward induction and things like that.
yeah,
But but as long as you have the toolkit, that all becomes, I guess, again, back to the golden triangle, like that then becomes more a matter of experience. Like, once you get used to using them in flexible ways, you can start to put them in slightly more unexpected combinations to build up bigger logic, that kind of thing.
yeah. And in general, the way that these weeks are going to work is I will be sharing, I guess, what you would call some of the fundamentals of the functions and their uses. I'm going to share a workbook from our training at Full Stack Modeler. I'm just going to give it away. It's something that I've kind of pulled together from different parts of our training. I'll give it away for free as part of this. So I will go through a bit of training, but I'll also then kind of point people to this workbook. And you're generally going to lean more in then on uh, actual battle exercises from past battles, and maybe looking at a little bit more of the advanced stuff as we go through.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I guess to let people know, it's going to be on both of our channels. So the videos, we're kind of digitally together today, but we're mostly going to do kind of separate videos. So Giles's ones will be on the Full Stack Modeler channel. Mine will be on my channel, but we'll also just have a playlist, for sort of all the text week videos, all the lookup week videos, whatever, so that it's easy to kind of find them. And I guess the other thing to mention is we're going to we're going to be sort of releasing them on a relatively independent schedule over the week. So, if you come along at the start of text week or the start of lookup week and I'm using a function that you've never even heard of, at some point before the end of the week, Giles will probably have shown you how to use that function and where it comes from and the sort of basic setup. So if you come to one of mine and you're like, wait, what's going on here? Then Giles has got your back.
Go and have a look at my stuff. Exactly. And then for me, like the mindset stuff, we talked about this. I'm really intrigued to pull your mind apart on this, where you've got through to a number of finals. I'm sure I know you weren't as convinced as me, but I'm convinced there are some absolute nuggets
It's
of insights from mindset that
it's
will
funny
be
after
good.
we had this conversation a couple of days ago where Giles said, well, we should talk about the mindset tactics stuff. I was like, I don't know, man. I think I have this sort of, credibility to talk about Excel. I don't think people want to hear from me on other random topics. But no, you convinced me that I should throw a bit of that. So yeah, there's going to be a little bit. We'll probably like drop a little bit in at the end of the, more practical stuff, a little bit of kind of tactics or mindset or strategy or that side of things just for fun.
Just for fun. Excellent. All right, love it. Well, look, let's talk structure. And we're not going to go too deep again, because the whole purpose of this series is not to try and get people to the finals. So I think I would focus people's attention in on the left-hand side initially of what we've got here. This is the kind
Yeah.
of overall competition structure. There are
Yep.
10 individual battles coming up from January the 25th to October the 10th.
Yep.
For me, you almost ignore everything that gets you to Vegas at the right hand side. It's just 10 opportunities to practice and to get some really good experience trying this stuff, and learning at least one or two new things every time.
Yeah, totally agree. There's 10 rounds that are open to everyone, that are all independent of each other. Like everybody starts off from zero every round. And, if you're really good, or if you get very invested and excited about it and become really good, then there's paths that take you off to, knockout rounds into Las Vegas and all kinds of fun stuff. It's worth getting excited about if you get there. But again, like we talked about earlier, you don't need to do any of that stuff to get a lot of value out of this, both in terms of kind of personal satisfaction, skill development, but also like valuable, marketable skills that will make you, more efficient at your job, more marketable, whatever. So yeah, that's
I,
that's the setup.
I think some people will try this for the first time and absolutely get the bug. I'm convinced of it. It certainly caught me, even though I did very badly the first two times. I certainly got the bug pretty quickly. And
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to love about it. I don't know. I mean, I'm conscious as I say that I'm a nerd, and my tastes are a little niche. Although, among the people watching this channel, I'm sure there's a lot of sympathy for that sentiment.
if anybody's found this video series, I think they're in the niche. It's all good. All right, so this is
Yes.
my last slide, and really, what we wanted to do next was actually just show you a typical battle workbook with the 5 rounds and the bonus questions. So I will stop sharing, and then Tim's going to pick up.
And yes, I will share this. So what we're looking at here is the first round case from last year, Road to Las Vegas Battle 1. And again, don't worry too much about the specifics of this case, but just want to give you a sense of what you will see. So, you've got kind of a little bit of sort of banner and advertising of the competition in general here, who the case author is. Peter was the most prolific author of last year. I think he wrote maybe 5 different cases over the course of the year, all very good. He's got quite a talent for it. Anyway, so the basic setup you'll get is there will be some set of instructions up here. Sometimes it's just a couple of lines. Sometimes it's a slightly intimidating wall of text. But this is like all the setup. So in this case, we're playing a game of whack-a-mole. So you've got a grid here with different moles that give you points and different multipliers and different adjustments and so on. And so this kind of walks you through all the different adjustments. And you have some sort of reference data over here. That's a pretty typical setup. And then what you have is basically 5 levels, starting from the simplest and going to the most advanced, but also most of the time fairly directly building upon each other. So what you'll often find is, the first question is is almost to help you get oriented. So like here, it's asking what does the listed cell contain in the whack-a-mole grid? And you could almost do this one by hand. You could sort of go to cell F8. Let's see, it's here, and you can copy that and paste it in here. We'll show you better ways to do that during lookup week, obviously. But this is sort of okay. So have you got yourself oriented? But so the structure for all the levels is there are multiple questions, usually kind of between 10 and 30. Each one has a different input, one or more inputs over here. Um, and so the idea is you have to do some calculation multiple times. So in this case, it's a relatively straightforward thing. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's a two-dimensional lookup, so it's not totally trivial, but it's a kind of small calculation. But then as you go on, it gets more advanced. So like here in level 2, it asks you how many points do you get if you hit these 20 cells in order. So you have to split it up, find out what's in each of those cells, find out how they interact with each other, oh, sorry, no, here all the modifiers don't apply. And then, here you get to, okay, multipliers and resets and other things kick in. And then, the complexity builds. So like here, you're saying now the grid shifts every time you hit it. So, if you hit over here, then everything shifts up and to the left and so on. I mean, I'll be honest, the first case last year was a pretty tough start. The winning score here was I think one person got level 4 out. Um, it was a tough one. But in any case, the basic idea is you've got you know you've got 5 levels that typically build on each other, and in each level you have to do a repeated calculation with a series of different inputs. And so that leads you to thinking about, well, if I split this out into kind of 20 different cells, and then I do, a series of calculations based on each of those, you could try and do it all in one row so that you can copy that entire set of calculations down here. That starts to get challenging as the workbook gets bigger. You can solve one example and then use a data table to work through the others. We'll show you how to do that when the time comes. Or you can start to build, more complicated formulas so that you have all that work going on in one cell or in just a few cells. But that's probably certainly at the advanced end, or maybe a little bit beyond the advanced end of where we're going to get to in this short course. But we'll see what we get to. And then the other thing to mention is that you also have 3 bonus questions. So I mentioned that the 5 levels typically build on each other. So, level 5 is a more complicated version of level 4, which is a more complicated version of level 3. But then you typically have bonus questions that are somewhat or completely independent of those. So it might be asking you, like here, for example, which cell is the most frequently selected across all levels? You don't have to think about the whack-a-mole gameplay element at all. It's just, which of M14 and K12 and O2 and so on comes up the most often. And so that also, it gives you something to sort of fall back on if you get stuck, but it also leads to some interesting tactical stuff as you're thinking about what's the most I can get done in 30 minutes. Okay, I've got 2 levels out and I've spent 20 minutes. Can I solve another level in 30 minutes, or should I just try and get one bonus question done? There's a whole kind of fun tactical aspect to it, which again, if you're only interested in the skill development and you find that side of things stressful, then don't worry about it. If you find it fun and kind of challenging and engaging as I do, then great. But if you don't, you don't have to worry about the time. You can just try it in your own time later. But that's
and
the sort of
enjoy
general
it
setup of it.
to a certain extent. Enjoy it, I think, is the answer, isn't it? You
Yeah.
just as we sort of round up, you hit on the 2 major things for me that I've observed. One is the in time strategy. You've got 30 minutes. How quickly can you come up with your strategy for what you're going to do as an approach? Probably be within the first 2 minutes. How are you going to use the last 5 minutes? As you said, if you've answered levels 1 and 2 or 1, 2, and 3, have you got enough time to even, make any dent in level 4? Or do you just try and get the bonus questions? And the other thing you touched on that always kind of threw me in the moment was, where do you do the work in your workbook? Do you just try and use all the columns to the right of the sheet that you're looking at there? do you add another another worksheet and start playing around with things there? I think quite often you and the other competitors that are doing the live sessions really lean on copying worksheets or copying the supporting data worksheets just to make sure you don't lose that original version, through whatever it is you're trying to do to it.
Yep, yep, for sure. I mean, the last thing you want is to have made some, manual find replace or something, then realize you've lost some data you needed and have to go back and unwind everything, which I have done at least once.
I think that was a really useful walkthrough. And for me, there is always seemingly this jump from level 3 to level 4. I don't think it's always the case, but quite often I've found that 1, 2, and 3, you kind of, it's reasonably hard sometimes at level 3, but it's doable. And then quite often there's a bit of a step up to level 4. So we want to get everybody to the point where they are comfortably answering the first 3 levels and starting to get a bit of a good stab at what they've got to do to get into the higher rounds.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then, I think once you've got the toolkit, it's a lot easier to build on that yourself, like to
Yeah.
explore, how could I make this more complicated? How could I layer other things into it in a way that, like, if you don't know how to split up a string of text in a dynamic way or how to extract a piece from it, then it's almost like you can't start.
Yeah.
Whereas I think where we want to get you to is you can start. And once you can start, the limit to where you can get to is usually not going to be, I don't know a function. It's going to be, can I creatively think of something to do with the functions that I have?
And the more experience you get trying these things, the more practice you'll have coming up with these creative solutions. So the
Yep.
golden triangle. There you go. All right, so I think that pretty
All
much
right.
wraps up our first video, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
you'll have to keep an eye on our YouTube pages. Follow us on LinkedIn if you're not already, and I'm sure we'll keep posting about it. But I'm delighted to finally get this kind of up and running with you, Dim. Should be good.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.